This is an introductory webinar for teachers using the Personal Finance Lab budgeting game. The budgeting game at Personal Finance Lab gives your students the role of a college student with a part-time job. You have a lot of control over what's going to happen to them over their 12 simulated months, but each student is going to start with $700 in their checking account and $300 in their savings account. Each couple of days in the month, your students are going to have random events that pop up, causing them to interact with different aspects of their personal cash flow, and how they and their decision will have impacts that carry down from day to day. The game runs for 12 virtual months. Each month takes between 15 and 20 minutes for students to complete, so you can use this both either as a in-class activity or you can assign it as homework. So let's get started with the game. First up, your students are going to choose an avatar. This applies only to the budgeting game. Next, they're going to be prompted that they need to save money each month in order to build up their score. Students are encouraged to move as much money as they possibly can from their checking account to their savings account. Remember, they start with $700 in their checking account and $300 in their savings account. However, we give them warnings whenever their checking account balance gets below $500 because we want to make sure they have enough money in their account to pay their regular bills that come up. You can see here that students have a projected expenses for each month. You as the teacher will set every one of these expenses when you set the game. I'll show you how to do that towards the end of this webinar. So to make sure the students don't just click through this, we actually have them add up everything that's coming this month. If they just type in some random number, we actually penalize them, which takes money away from their total cash flow for this month. Next, your students are working as a part-time waiter at a cafe, which means that each month or each week, they're going to have a slightly different income compared to the last. You can see in the first week I was almost full-time, but as it goes on, I had less and less hours as the month goes on. These are randomly generated for every student every month in the game. As a teacher, you set the hourly rate wage that students earn, and you also set the income tax rate that they're charged. Just like the fixed expenses each month, students are encouraged to add these up in order to get the exact amount that they're going to be earning for each month. And if they just try to skip through, we penalize them. Now you can see in this month, my income is going to exceed my expenses. However, this might not be the case in every month, and there's always more expenses and more opportunities to earn income that will pop up throughout the month. So first, I will roll the dice to start the game. Whenever the students roll the dice, it takes their dice roll and it progresses them through the month. And at the end of their turn, they have a decision to make for a expense or some other event that happens in their life. So here they're prompted: do they want to buy a smartwatch? So for now, I'm going to say no because right now it just seems like a frivolous expense. However, their yes and no actions are going to impact them throughout the rest of the game. So when it comes to buying like a smartwatch, there probably won't be any impact that happens to me. However, if it's something like buying renter's insurance, there is a small probability that each student will have some sort of break-in or other emergency in their apartment that is going to impact them later on. So their decisions they make at each point will have an impact that rolls out. That does not necessarily mean there's a right or wrong answer for every activity. This is because these events are assigned a random probability based on how likely they are to happen in real life, slightly exaggerated because students are only going through 1 year at a time. So even if one student chooses to buy renter's insurance, for example, and another doesn't, one might have a break-in, one won't. The probability of those future events happening has nothing to do with the decisions they made. It's just the decision they did make will have an impact on how that rolls out in the rest of the game that they play. So if I roll the dice again, I'm progressing through. So nothing happens here. I just have a $10 charge, and you can see I was given the option of incurring this charge on either my debit card or my credit card. Students are encouraged to use their credit card to make up for cash shortfalls, and they also track their credit score throughout the game. If they don't use their credit card, they can't build up their credit score. However, if they do use their credit card, they need to make sure that they pay their credit card bill on time each month. You can see on the 19th here is when the credit card is issued, and the 26th is when the bill is due. So they have between the 19th and the 26th to pay their credit card bill. If they miss it, then they're going to be penalized both in terms of interest charged on their credit card, and they're going to start losing score points on their credit score. Students also have a financial summary report, which shows how their finances progress throughout the month. This is also where they're encouraged to move money from their checking account to their savings account. They have an account summary, which shows the balances of their account over the course of the month. And they have a credit card statement that shows how much they're being charged that they've placed on their credit card. As the game goes on, students are also prompted to make decisions on how they're going to spend every weekend. For example, they're given the opportunity to work extra hours at their cafe job, in which case it launches a mini game where they have the opportunity to try to earn more money by serving tables, or they have the option to study, where they can increase their grades at school, or they can spend time with their friends, or they can work on household chores. These decisions each have an impact, and we encourage students to try to balance their time between all four objectives. If the students repeatedly choose the same path multiple times, they start getting penalties relating to all of the other things that they're neglecting. So let's take a look at what it looks like for a teacher to set up their class budget game. As a teacher, go to your administration to the top of the page and click Create Challenge. As of right now, the stock game and budget game have a single flow on Personal Finance Lab. So I'm going to go through the whole process and then skip through some of the portfolio settings because we're not using it in this class. First, give your challenge a name. This just needs to be some unique game in our system and it's going to appear on the registration page for your students. The same with the description. Just make this something so your students know they're in the right place. The estimated number of participants is used when we use just for our internal analytics. This is not used to determine site licenses or anything else. It's just that when we tell people that we had 750,000 students use our platforms last year, this is where we get that number. Next, choose whether your contest is going to be either public or private. A public has open registration where students can any student who has your link can take it and register to your class. Private would require students to enter a password. We only have 1 or 2 classes each year that have an issue with students joining the wrong class, but if you do see that happening in your class, you can change it to private to add a password. We recommend leaving it public for initial registration. Next, choose the registration window. This is when students can first come into your class and register their account. The trading window is where your students come in to manage their portfolio in the stock game. Since we're not using the stock game in this class, we're going to move it into the future. That way students will never have an opportunity to place a trade. Next, choose your time zone. This is used for the assignments portion of the site because you can set very specific end dates. So keeping in the accurate time zone means your students will have no confusion about when their assignments are due. And finally, whether or not you enable the forum. You can turn the forum on to let students post messages to each other on the platform. This is important if you don't have very much time to dedicate to class discussion in class because a lot of the activities that happen to one student in the budget game will not happen to the others. So you want to give them an opportunity to discuss what happened to them and how their decisions played out throughout the game. The next 2 pages are settings for the stock game, which we're not using for this class, so I'm going to skip over them. Finally, for the budget game, first I'm going to turn it on, and then I choose the dates where it's active. These are the dates when your students can come into the budget game and first start going through each of the simulated months. Next, as the teacher, I can set all those fixed expenses that the students are hit with each month. I can also set the hourly wage that they're going to earn at their job and the income tax they're charged. Coming soon, you'll also be able to choose what types of events are going to happen to them in the game. There's a certain number of events that are going to be fixed, which means they're going to happen in almost every class, but you will be able to skew these events to happen more towards topics having to do with contracts or having to do with earning extra income or improving job prospects or managing insurance or several other categories that you'll be able to choose between. Finally, I'm going to set up my assignment. This is the curriculum portion of Personal Finance Lab. There's several different types of lessons available, and typically teachers set them up week by week. However, you can put any time frame you want. So this is going to be my first week's assignment, so I'll call it week 1. I'll choose the dates for this assignment. I'll have it start today and end in 1 week. And I'll have it end at the end of the day. Next, you'll choose the tasks you want your students to complete as part of this assignment. So there's several different types of activities available. The first are called articles. So with an article, this is an article we've written with our team of personal finance and investing experts, and each article is between 1,000 and 2,000 words. We write them at about between a 6th and ninth grade reading level, depending on the subject area. As often as possible, we include extra videos, we include glossary terms, we include little mini games, um, but each of the articles ends with a pop quiz at the very end. So the pop quiz is between 3 and 5 questions wrong, and the whole idea is just to make sure the student read the article that came before it. And they're not designed to be difficult, they're not designed to be tricky. You can choose whether the students are allowed to retry each activity, or whether, if you leave this unchecked, the first attempt is going to be saved to a grade book. So just select the tasks that you want the students to complete, and then it'll appear for your students when they log in for their first class. Types of activities include investing in fundamentals and intermediate investing tips. These focus heavily on investing and placing trades in the stock game portion. So not every class is going to take use of these. However, you can next get into the personal finance topics, spendings and savings plans, budgeting, debit cards, credit, and everything in between. There's over 70 different topics to choose from. We align these both to state and national standards for personal finance. So just pick and choose whatever is going to line up with what you're talking about in class each week, and that will be the assignment you'll give your students. We also have economics lessons. Depending on your state, there's quite a lot of overlap in the standards between economics and personal finance. So there could be quite a lot of topics in here you're going to grab as well. Same with career prep. Career prep is an essential part of many state standards for personal finance. And we have several career prep lessons talking about how to build up a resume, certain certifications that are important if they want to go into certain industries, and performing well in job interviews. At the top of the page, you can also find our Career Center, which has our job and internship database. Students can use this to find real job postings from around the country. There's over 500,000 job postings in here at any given time, and the idea is not necessarily that students are going to be applying for jobs and internships, but using this to search for their dream job, identify the work requirements for that dream job, and start working backwards in order to build a career plan to get from where they are today to where they want to be. We also have a number of business topics, so depending on the class that you're teaching, you might be able to grab some of these. We divide them between accounting, management, and marketing topics. We also have our Investing 101 course. Most schools that use the Investing 101 course do so in conjunction with the stock game. Unlike the a la carte activities that we have besides these, Investing 101 is organized into logical chapters, each one following the other and each assuming the student is familiar with the topics from the previous chapter. There's on average 10 topics in each chapter. These topics are shorter than the articles. They're only between 500 and 1,000 words, and each chapter ends with an exam. The students need to take and pass the exam in order to get credit for having completed the chapter. We also have several activities dealing just with trading in the stock game, along with mathematics topics which use the stock game's data in order to learn more about spreadsheets and using Excel and Google Sheets. Next, we have the assessment. So if you include an assessment with your class, it's going to look at all of the other activities that you've assigned here, and it's going to take 2 questions from each of those activities and give students a unit review. That way students can retake some of the same quiz questions, but this time they're not going to have the actual articles in front of them, so they're going to see how well they remembered what they've learned. And last, we have the budget game actions. So here you can require your students to do certain activities within the budgeting game. So for example, you can say, I need you to complete at least 1 month this week. I need you to transfer money to your savings account 2 times. When we're talking about when the students have the option of what they're going to be doing each weekend, you'll need to study, you'll need to earn money, you'll need to take care of your chores, you'll need to socialize. You can require students to make certain activities that way. Once you have your budget game, once you have your assignment created the way you like it, click Create, which will set up your entire budget game and your assignment for your class, and it'll be ready for student registration. So there's 2 ways to get your students registered. The first is via link. So if you give this link to your students and they're not logged in already to an account on Personal Finance Lab, clicking it will give them a registration page where they pick their username and password. So you can see my class and my description is loaded here. My student enters their details they want to log in with. Email address is optional, and this is only used for password resets. We also collect the first name and last name for your own reports. If you don't want your students to register themselves, you also have the opportunity to use what we call the registration file. The registration file lets you specify how many student accounts you want us to generate, and then we'll give you a set of logins you can give to your students. So for example, I'll use Knights, my high school mascot, as my username prefix, and I'll ask for 5 accounts. I click Add, and the system generates 5 usernames and passwords for me that I can distribute to my students. If I come back to the registration file later, I can see all of my students' usernames listed here. I have the opportunity to edit their usernames, and I also have the opportunity to reset my students' passwords. The rest of your teacher tools are going to be found under Administration, called Reports. Most of these reports deal with the stock game itself, but the 2 important ones are first the registration file that we were just looking at, and the budget game report. Using the budget game report, you can look at all of your students in your class. You'll see their total game score in the budget game, their total net worth, and their total credit score. If you click View Details, you can get this as a breakdown for each month that they've gone through the game. Your students also have access to the reports for themselves in the class, as well as the class ranking showing the total game score, net worth, and credit score of every student in the class each month. If you have any questions on the budgeting game, feel free to contact us at info@personalfinancelab.com, me personally at kevin@personalfinancelab.com, or use the Contact Us page, which is under About at the main menu, and you can click Contact Us. During market hours, you can also click here to live chat with our support team. So good luck with this semester, and we hope to see your classes come in soon.